You are not confused, you are infiltrated. 4 voices live in your head, softening you, redirecting you, quietly ensuring you never become dangerous or sovereign. You have been trained to look outward for resistance. Society taught you to blame circumstances, rivals, bad luck, or timing. That framing keeps you harmless. The real obstruction was never external pressure, it was internal occupation. An enemy installed inside you, speaking in your own voice, wearing familiar language, issuing commands you mistake for your own thoughts. Power is not lost in battle. It is surrendered internally long before confrontation ever arrives. Most men fail not because they are weak, but because they are internally divided. They hesitate, rationalize, delay, soften, not because reality demands it, but because something inside them does. That something is not intuition, it is conditioning. A set of implanted voices designed to regulate you from within, so no external force ever has to. You call these voices reason, morality, realism, loyalty. That is the deception. Real enemies never announce themselves as threats. They present as protectors, advisors, guardians of safety. But every time you obey them, you become smaller, slower, more predictable. Sovereignty begins with a lens shift. Stop asking what blocks you and start asking who is speaking inside you when you retreat. Internal enemies are more effective than external ones because they don't trigger resistance. You don't argue with them. You justify them. You defend them to others. You build your identity around them. That is why they survive. History has always favored this method. The most efficient empires didn't rely on constant force. They installed belief systems. Once the subject policed himself, the empire could withdraw its soldiers. The same principle operates inside you. Once the voice is installed, control becomes automatic. This chapter forces a brutal recognition. Not every thought deserves authority. Not every feeling deserves obedience. Not every internal warning is wisdom. Some are restraints disguised as virtue. You've been told that inner conflict is normal. It is. It's a sign of failed hierarchy. In any functioning system, an army, a state, a predator, there is a chain of command. Orders move downward. There is no debate during execution. Inside you, that hierarchy has been inverted. Subordinate impulses issue commands. Fear vetoes action. Comfort overrides strategy. That is not balance, that is occupation. You cannot negotiate with internal enemies because they benefit from your survival without power. They do not want you destroyed, they want you contained, safe enough to function, weak enough to never threaten existing structures. This is why progress feels exhausting, why clarity collapses under pressure, why decisive moments dissolve into hesitation. You are hosting voices that thrive on delay. Before any strategy, before any behavioral shift, you must accept this. Power requires silence, not calm. Not peace, silence. A controlled internal environment where only one authority speaks. This chapter does not ask you to fix yourself. That language is for domestication. It asks you to identify who has been speaking without permission. Once you see the internal enemy, you cannot unsee it. And once seen, tolerance becomes betrayal. In the next chapter, the mechanism is exposed, how these voices gain authority, why they sound convincing, and how they bypass your rational defenses without force. No voice enters your mind with a badge. Authority is not announced, it is accumulated. These voices didn't overpower you, they outlasted you. They earned control through repetition, emotional leverage, and timing, not truth. The first mechanism is repetition under stress. A voice spoken once is ignored. Spoken repeatedly during uncertainty, fatigue, or fear, it becomes policy. Your mind is not democratic under pressure, it is hierarchical. In moments of stress, it obeys whatever sounds familiar. These voices learned that. They waited for weakness, then spoke often enough to be remembered. This is why the most dangerous internal commands appear when you're tired, isolated, or exposed. Not because they are correct, but because resistance is lowest. Over time, familiarity is mistaken for wisdom. You stop questioning the source. You start trusting the tone. The second mechanism is emotional blackmail. These voices do not argue logically. They threaten consequences, rejection, loss, guilt, loneliness, instability. They frame obedience as safety and defiance as catastrophe. If you do this, you'll be alone. If you push forward, you'll lose them. If you assert yourself, you'll become something ugly. Notice the pattern. Action is framed as danger. Submission is framed as virtue. This is not conscience. It is conditioning. Real conscience clarifies action. These voices obscure it. The third mechanism is moral camouflage. The most effective control never says submit. It says be good. Loyalty, humility, patience, gratitude, neutral traits weaponized into restraints. Once a voice wraps itself in morality, opposing it feels like betrayal. You don't just resist the thought, you resist the identity attached to it. That is how power is neutralized without force. The fourth mechanism is borrowed authority. These voices rarely sound like strangers. They sound like parents, teachers, peers, past lovers, cultural expectations. Your brain recognizes the imprint and assigns credibility automatically. You aren't hearing truth, you're hearing memory. This is why silencing them feels disorienting. You aren't losing thoughts, you're losing ghosts. Another critical mechanism is false timing. These voices rarely say never, they say not now. Delay is their favorite weapon. They know outright refusal triggers suspicion, but postponement feels reasonable. One delay becomes a habit becomes identity. You don't fail, you stall until the window closes. From the outside, it looks like caution. From the inside, it is paralysis with justification. These voices also exploit internal contradiction. They speak differently depending on context. In safety, they whisper ambition. Under risk, they demand restraint. This inconsistency keeps you confused, chasing alignment that never arrives. You mistake inner noise for complexity. In reality, it is sabotage. Understand this clearly. Voices gain authority not because they are right, but because they remain unchallenged long enough to feel inevitable. Once a voice becomes how you think, it stops feeling external. It becomes identity, and identities defend themselves viciously. That is why attempts at change feel like self-betrayal. You aren't changing behavior, you're threatening an internal ruler. This chapter strips the illusion of innocence. These voices did not appear accidentally. They were reinforced by reward and punishment. Obedience brought social approval. Resistance brought friction. Over time, your nervous system learned the pattern and internalized enforcement. You became your own guard. Power begins when you revoke automatic authority, when you stop asking whether a voice feels right and start asking whether it serves dominance, survival, and sovereignty. In the next chapter, these mechanisms are given faces. 4 specific voice archetypes: distinct, predictable, removable. Internal enemies don't speak randomly. They follow patterns, predictable roles. Once you can name them, they lose mystique. This chapter does not deal in abstraction, it identifies targets. The first voice, the pacifier. This voice speaks in the language of peace. It urges you to avoid conflict, smooth tension, stay agreeable. It frames resistance as unnecessary drama and dominance as insecurity. The pacifier's goal is not harmony, it is sedation. A calm man is manageable. A compliant man is invisible. Every time you suppress an instinct to assert, confront, or demand, this voice grows stronger. The pacifier thrives in social environments. It reminds you what others expect, what might upset them, what could change how you're seen. It turns reputation into a leash. Under its rule, you don't choose your actions, you anticipate reactions. That is not social intelligence, it is submission with foresight. The second voice, the rationalizer. This voice sounds intelligent. It never says no directly. It offers reasons, contexts, complexities. It convinces you that waiting is wiser, that conditions aren't optimal, that more information is required. It flatters you by making hesitation feel strategic. The rationalizer kills momentum. It dissolves urgency. It replaces action with analysis and labels paralysis as prudence. Under its influence, you become permanently preparing, always close, never executing. It does not oppose power, it postpones it until power becomes impossible. The third voice, the guilt broker. This voice enforces loyalty to the past. It reminds you of who helped you, who sacrificed, who would be hurt if you changed. It ties your future to old agreements, emotional debts, and outdated roles. The guilt broker ensures evolution feels like betrayal. This voice is lethal because it weaponizes empathy. It convinces you that growth requires permission, that self-prioritization is cruelty. Under its control, you negotiate your ambition downward to preserve comfort for others. Power cannot coexist with emotional debt. The fourth voice, the fear accountant. This voice calculates risk obsessively. It tallies worst-case scenarios, magnifies loss, and minimizes upside. It frames bold action as recklessness and safety as wisdom. The fear accountant is obsessed with survival, but only physical and social survival, never dominance. This voice keeps you technically alive but strategically irrelevant. It trades long-term sovereignty for short-term stability. Under its rule, you avoid losses so efficiently that you never experience meaningful gains. These four voices do not argue with each other. They collaborate. The pacifier smooths, the rationalizer delays, the guilt broker binds, the fear accountant vetoes. Together, they form a closed system of control. Notice something critical: none of them sound evil. That is why they survive. They masquerade as care, intelligence, loyalty, and caution. But outcomes reveal intent. And the outcome is always the same: you remain non-threatening. Once identified, these voices cannot be reasoned with. Recognition alone weakens them. They rely on anonymity. Once exposed, they lose authority. You stop mistaking them for yourself. This chapter creates separation, not healing, distance. You are not your internal dialogue. You are the one who hears it, and hearing precedes silencing. In the next chapter, the threat deepens. These voices are not personal failures. They are ancient tools shaped by history, culture, and human nature to produce compliant men. These voices were not created by accident, and they were not tailored uniquely for you. They are ancient instruments, refined, reused, perfected across centuries of human organization. Any system that requires stability learns one truth early: controlling bodies is expensive, controlling minds is efficient. The internal voice is the final evolution of power. Early dominance relied on force, chains, blades, punishment. That model failed at scale: too much resistance, too much cost. So control evolved. It learned to speak softly, to move inside, to convince the subject that obedience was self-chosen. This is where your voices were born. Every civilization that survived longer than a generation understood psychological domestication. Priests called it virtue. States called it order. Families called it values. The language changed, but the function remained identical. Reduce volatility, suppress individual will, standardize behavior. Men with internal restraints are easier to predict, easier to tax, easier to deploy, easier to replace. Your pacifier exists because conflict destabilizes systems. Assertive men disrupt hierarchy. So they are taught early that peace is moral, that aggression is dangerous, that confrontation is immature. The message is clear: control yourself before someone else has to. Your rationalizer exists because urgency creates independence. A man who acts decisively bypasses permission structures, so hesitation is rewarded, overthinking is praised, analysis becomes virtue, execution becomes suspect. Your guilt broker exists because lineage must be preserved. When men outgrow their environment, systems fracture, families lose leverage, institutions lose loyalty, so obligation is installed early. Gratitude is weaponized. Memory becomes a leash. Your fear accountant exists because risk produces winners and losers. Systems can tolerate neither. They prefer stability over excellence. predictable mediocrity over unpredictable dominance. So fear is amplified, loss is dramatized, safety is sanctified. This is not conspiracy, it is selection. Human nature itself assists this process. Your brain evolved to survive scarcity, not to rule abundance. It is loss-averse, tribe-dependent, status-sensitive. These traits once kept you alive. Now they keep you obedient. The voices exploit this mismatch. Modern environments reward compliance while punishing dominance unless dominance is sanctioned. You are encouraged to compete, but only within permitted lanes, to rise, but not too fast, to speak, but not too directly. The internal voice becomes the enforcer of invisible boundaries. You feel this as intuition. It is. It is pattern recognition shaped by reward and punishment. Your nervous system learned which behaviors triggered approval and which triggered isolation. Over time, it internalized the rules to avoid pain. This is why these voices feel protective. They were trained through consequence. They exist to prevent social exile, financial instability, and emotional discomfort. They are survival algorithms, not sovereignty protocols. But survival and power are not aligned goals. History does not remember the well-adjusted. It remembers the dangerous, those who exceeded norms, those who ignored internal warnings and acted anyway. Every figure you respect violated internal voices to rise. The cost was isolation, rejection, conflict. That is the price these voices are designed to help you avoid. Understand the trade. Obedience buys comfort. Silence buys power. Once you see the origin of these voices, respect for them evaporates. You stop treating them as guidance and start recognizing them as relics, tools designed for environments that no longer serve your trajectory. In the next chapter, the focus shifts from exposure to response. Not negotiation, not suppression, replacement. Because silence is not achieved by force, it is enforced by hierarchy. Silencing is not suppression. Suppression creates pressure. Pressure leaks. Strategic silencing is replacement through hierarchy. You do not fight the voices, you remove their authority by installing a higher command. Every internal system obeys structure. Where there is no clear authority, noise dominates. Your first move is not discipline, it is reorganization. Start with behavioral dominance. Voices weaken when they fail to predict outcomes. Action destroys credibility faster than argument. When the pacifier urges restraint, act decisively anyway, not emotionally, precisely. The moment action does not result in catastrophe, its authority fractures. It relied on imagined consequences. Reality exposes the bluff. The rationalizer is neutralized by deadlines. Not goals, deadlines. Goals invite planning. Deadlines force execution. Decide before clarity arrives. Clarity follows movement, never the reverse. Each completed action without full readiness degrades the rationalizer's legitimacy. The guilt broker cannot be argued with because it operates on moral leverage. You do not justify your actions to it. You outgrow it. Emotional debt dissolves when behavior no longer seeks approval. Reduce contact. Reduce explanation. Reduce disclosure. Power does not announce transitions, it executes them. The fear accountant is silenced through controlled exposure to loss, not recklessness, calculated risk, voluntary discomfort. You must teach your nervous system that loss is survivable. Each survived risk rewrites the ledger. Fear fades when it fails to deliver its promised destruction. But these tactics are secondary. The primary mechanism is hierarchy installation. You must establish a single internal authority with veto power over all voices, not emotion, not morality, strategy, a cold, outcome-driven evaluator. One question only: does this action increase or decrease leverage? If a voice speaks and cannot answer that question favorably, it is ignored. This requires ritualized decision-making, not constant introspection. Rules, predetermined responses. When X occurs, Y happens. No debate, no analysis. Internal democracy is abolished. Environment plays a critical role. Voices grow loud in static environments. Change location, change routine, change inputs. Silence is easier to maintain when the terrain is unfamiliar. New environments disrupt old conditioning. Language matters. Stop narrating your inner state. Narration amplifies voices. Move in silence internally as well. Thought minimalism is power. You will feel resistance, not fear, identity withdrawal. The voices will escalate. They will claim urgency, morality, danger. This is expected. It is the sound of authority collapsing. Do not negotiate during collapse. That restores their power. Understand this clearly. Silencing is not permanent by effort alone. It is maintained by consistency. The moment you revert to explanation, hesitation, or emotional bargaining, the voices test their access again. This chapter is not about peace. It is about command, internal order enforced without justification. Once the voices are silenced, something unsettling occurs: emptiness, no guidance, no reassurance, no internal applause. This is not failure. It is the absence of interference. Most men panic here and reinstall the voices. The next chapter addresses this void, the necessary death of the old identity, and the construction of one that does not require internal dialogue to function. Silence exposes a problem most men never confront. Without the voices, you are undefined. No commentary, no justification, no internal narrator explaining who you are or why you act. This absence is not emptiness, it is power without a story, and it terrifies those who were built on explanation. Your previous identity depended on noise, on internal debate, on moral framing and emotional accounting. That identity functioned as a mediator between you and the world. Once silenced, it becomes obsolete. This is why regression happens, not because the voices are strong, but because the old identity cannot survive without them. It requires approval, reassurance, and meaning. Power requires none. Identity death is not symbolic, it is behavioral. You stop explaining yourself internally. You stop defending your actions mentally. You stop seeking alignment between who you are and how you act. Action becomes identity. This is surgical, not emotional. The old identity was built for belonging. It prioritized coherence over effectiveness. It asked, "What kind of person am I being?" That question is now irrelevant. The new identity asks one thing only: did this increase leverage? When that becomes the sole metric, the need for internal voices collapses. They serve to negotiate between competing self-images. With no competing images, there is nothing to negotiate. This chapter enforces permanence. You will experience a withdrawal period, not sadness, disorientation. Without the internal narrator, time feels sharper, decisions feel heavier. There is no internal applause for restraint or patience, only consequence. Most men flee here. They reinstall the pacifier for comfort, the rationalizer for structure, the guilt broker for belonging, the fear accountant for safety. That restores identity and ends the experiment. Do not mistake discomfort for danger. Discomfort is the sensation of identity dissolving. The new identity is not described. It is enforced through repetition of behavior, predictable action patterns, non-negotiable standards, minimal internal dialogue, silence maintained by momentum. You do not become this identity, you operate it. This identity does not ask permission. It does not explain itself. It does not seek coherence. It exists as a function, not a narrative. Others will describe it. You will not. This is why it endures. Without internal commentary, external opinions lose leverage. Praise is irrelevant. Criticism has no surface to attach to. You are no longer managing an image. You are executing a role. That role is sovereignty. The final chapter delivers the warning most avoid. Silence is fragile if unguarded. Once achieved, it must be protected without sentiment. There is no return without cost. Silence is not stable by default. It is a controlled condition. Left unguarded, the voices do not disappear, they regroup. They wait for fatigue, success, loneliness, or loss. Then they test access again, softly at first, pretending to be concern, reflection, wisdom. This is where selection occurs. Most men believe the danger passed once the voices went quiet. That belief is how they return. Power is not taken in dramatic moments. It is surrendered during comfort. When vigilance fades, the pacifier reframes dominance as excess. The rationalizer whispers about balance. The guilt broker resurfaces with nostalgia. The fear accountant recalculates now that there is something to lose. This is not failure. It is the final test. Silence demands guardianship. You do not relax into it. You defend it like territory. Any voice that questions your authority, regardless of how reasonable it sounds, is treated as hostile until proven otherwise. Trust is no longer given internally. It is earned through outcome. Understand the cost of relapse. Once you've experienced silence, returning to noise is not neutral. It is degradation. The voices do not resume where they left off, they escalate. They punish you for rebellion by tightening control. Hesitation deepens, guilt sharpens, fear grows specific. This is why many men prefer ignorance. Silence creates responsibility. There is no internal committee to blame, no moral cover, no emotional excuse, only choice and consequence. You must decide what category you belong to. The majority require voices to function. They need constant interpretation, validation, and permission. They mistake that dependency for humanity. They will never be sovereign. A minority learn to operate without commentary. They act, absorb consequence, adjust, repeat. They do not ask who they are becoming. They decide what they do next. This is the divide. There is no motivation here, no promise of fulfillment, only selection. Silence is not for everyone. It isolates. It sharpens. It removes comfort along with confusion. If you protect it, your path narrows and strengthens. If you abandon it, the voices welcome you back. They always do. This is the final warning. Once you know how control works, innocence is gone. You either enforce silence or you volunteer for occupation. There is no third state.